Good to go.
Thanks, Dago. I think I'll wait just a couple more minutes. And then oh, there comes the old man. Hey, Stoyan. Stoyan, can you hear me?
Hi Sam, yes. Hi guys.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Are you ready?
I am ready.
I cannot wait to hear your session.
Thank you. When is yours? Is it like an hour later, this or what?
I think around 13 o'clock should be it. Yes, around 13
Okay.
my time, so Central European time.
Nice, cool. All right. Should we give it one more minute or should we start? I'll just give it like 30 seconds and we'll start. All right. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes. I see it. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, I think let's just get cracked in. So if anyone wants to join in, they'll join. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I will try to answer them. If I have an upcoming slide, I will ask you to hold if possible. If not, then I'll give you a quick answer, then we can discuss in details. Okay, so let's get cracking. Hello, thanks for joining me today. I am Samir Maisigar, and I'm the engineering technologist at Dell EMC. My job mostly revolves around Azure Stack products. Well, nowadays I'm starting to get other products in my scope as well, but I've been working with Azure Stack, and in particularly Azure Stack HCI for a while now. So this session is going to cover Azure Stack HCI on a very high level. We are not going to go into the nitty-gritty of each and every thing in Azure Stack HCI or each and every workload that it provides or satisfies. But we'll just go through what it is, what the background is, why are we arriving at this hybrid solution, and why should we care, basically, right? So that is the whole agenda for Azure Stack HCI. Again, so I work for Dell. Dell is a prominent player in the Azure Stack HCI market. So if you see any Dell branding here, then yes, I've taken those from the internal presentations that we do. But if you have any questions about Azure Stack HCI, or if you have any questions on Dell's solution on Azure Stack HCI, you can contact me. I'll try to help you. Okay, so with that, let's get straight into it, right? So today it is not really a secret that we are in the the phase or the era of digital transformation. This actually we have been in this era for a while now, right? So digital transformation, what does that actually mean? With the rise of public cloud, with the rise of hybrid solutions, with the rise of more and more services that you can consume out of the public cloud, there is also a need for hardware refresh. So there is also a need for rebalancing or distributing your workloads, right? So it is not as simple as just running something on-prem or migrating it completely to Azure. So when I say Azure, I mean any public cloud. So in this context, I'm going to talk only about Azure. But that is not that simple anymore, right? So the upcoming services, the upcoming demands also require you to basically transform your infrastructure, basically how you consume your services, how you consume your infrastructure. That basic concept is transforming as well. So every organization is rethinking how they engage with customers, employees, partners, and vendors, right? So today's is the world of collaboration. So it is not only that Microsoft will come up with a solution and then they will sell it and everyone will just go blindly believe them and buy everything that they say. That's not, of course, going to happen. So this is an ecosystem. This is not a tyrannical hierarchy. So it is a ecosystem. So we have to take everyone together. So we have to think about customers. We have to think about employees, partners, as well as vendors, right? So to best serve the customers and also employees, you have to collaborate with partners and vendors. So you also have to make your solutions easy for them to sell and easy for them to work with. So as part of the transformation, there are new demands and requirements coming from developers. So it is again the time has changed. So the developers are no longer just sitting on a computer, having their code written locally on their machine, and then uploading it somewhere, and then there's some kind of version control, some monitoring of the code. That is not the way that it is being done nowadays, right? So we have got some amazing serverless computing services that are already present in Azure, right? So, for example, app services or service apps, right? So, all this serverless computing where you don't even have to run something, run a machine to run the code on. You don't even have to do that anymore. That is also provided to you as a platform. Hello, Stoyan, Drago, are you guys there?
I'm here. Do you have any problems?
Yeah, I thought I disconnected. Am I still audible or what?
You're still visible, yes.
Okay, my teams were
You'll
showing
see
that
your
there's some
Outlook
problem.
now. Now, Teams.
Yes, one second, one second. My teams gave me like reconnecting messages to me, so I thought I lost you.
Try over.
Yeah, one second. Let me reshare this. Okay, can you see that now?
Yes, we see your screen.
All right, perfect.
Go ahead.
Uh, Sorry about that. I think my internet dropped for a while. Um, Cool. Anyway, so yeah, I was saying, so as part of the digital transformation, it is not only that you lift and shift or you run everything on your virtual machines on public cloud, you are also actually utilizing the public services into Azure, right? Like serverless computing. Um, there's also, as part of the transformation, every business is being impacted. So it's not only the core data center, it's also the edge locations, right? So what are edge locations are basically you've got a core data center somewhere on prem that is close to your, let's say, headquarters somewhere, and then you've got in cases of like retail shops, you've got different shops in all over the country, or you have mining sites, or you have oil and gas refinery plants, and so on, right? So this is actually, from the top of my head, I don't actually recall the exact number, but I think there's an IDC survey that says that 80% of the data is now going to come, or it is not going to be produced at the edge locations, right? So edge locations are actually very, very critical nowadays, where edge locations are basically where the consumers are, right? So instead of consumers coming to your core, services, IT services or locations from where you're providing the services, you are now responsible to take those services to the consumers, right? So that is where all the data is coming from. Also, with the rise of all these new services and all these fancy capabilities that a private and public cloud gives you. IT environments are also inevitably becoming a little more complex with it, right? So again, like I said, it is not only just a matter of running virtual machines anymore. It is also about running the collaboration tools. It is also about running containerization platform, right? So you've got Kubernetes, this basically this explosion of Kubernetes and containerization that is going on in IT today. You have to, or your hardware also has to be able to support this explosion of new technologies, right? So that is also where some systems are becoming a little more complex. And lastly, all these challenges must be met with limited human interaction. So why is that? Of course, limited human interaction also translates to a minimal potential for human errors, but it is also that it is also drives up the efficiency, right? So you can automate. It is, again, today is also an era of automation, so you try to automate as much as you can, so there is nothing critical or nothing repetitive that has the potential for error that is left to the human error. It's not prone to human error, right? So you want to save your time, you want to drive up your efficiency, and you want to reduce the human errors. So all these challenges must also be resolved with limited human interaction. So as part of it, customer environments are also evolving, right? So IT is playing a more strategic role increasingly in every organization strategy, right? So IT is, it's not like about like 10, 15 years ago. It was not, it was like a forgotten department of your organization where some bunch of nerds would go sit and you would just go to them, just can you fix my problem, my laptop's not working, my servers, I can't log into my server. It's not that simple anymore. As I like to say, every organization today is an IT organization, right? So whatever your vertical is, whatever your core operations are, you could be healthcare, you could be a data mining company, you could be educational, you could be anything, you could be banking, finance, right? But all of this workloads, all of this infrastructure is resting on IT today, right? And IT infrastructure is what is driving all of this. So it has become absolutely critical to make sure that you are running the best solution that you can, and while maintaining the best user experience with a low cost. Right? So it has become absolutely critical today. Um, and with emergence of new services and new applications, new tools, there are hundreds and thousands of applications that the customers are running. They could be running on-prem, they could be running on their core infrastructure, at their core data center, or they could be running on the edge. It's not only VMs, like I said, it is also containers. It is a combination of, let's say, managed databases. So all this data has to go somewhere. All this data has to be processed. So it goes through the databases. Again, all those serverless computing services that I just mentioned. These are absolutely like hammering your IT services or IT infrastructure today. And the infrastructure itself also is not just one platform. It is now spread across everywhere, right? So it is that core data centers, that the traditional core data centers. um, it's the traditional core data center. It is the hyperscalers, like I said, the Azure, AWS, GCP, could be anything of your choice, or it could also be multi-cloud, right? So you can have a footprint in Azure, you can have it on GCP, you can have it on AWS, anywhere. So a lot of people, so we do talk to a lot of people who are only using single cloud, and they advocate for single cloud. We also talk to some customers who advocate a multi-cloud approach because they don't want to be locked in to a particular vendor. Because again, it could be part of their IT strategy, could be part of their compliance or whatever. But we are seeing the trend that people are also moving to a multi-cloud approach. So multi-cloud is not only multi-hyper cloud, it is also multi on-prem, hybrid, as well as a hyperscaler. Um, Again, there are branch offices, remote offices, like I said, so you can that all the data, most of the data is going to come from the edge locations. And these locations are often very critical in terms of latency, in terms of the features that they need. So as part of the devices that you're shipping to edge, there actually is kind of an assumption, or it's not only nice to have anymore, that your device should be able to perform or at least support some IoT devices, right? Some IoT performance, some what's it called, AI, ML, right? So all these things, it is an expectation today that okay, your edge devices should be able to perform or at least support these operations. Let me go to the next slide, right? So what are the desired IT infrastructure outcomes out of this? So there is data center modernization as well as hybrid acceleration, right? So as part of the data center modernization, what you want to do is you want to simplify operations like we have just talked about, increase efficiency and transform IT productivity with minimum infrastructure, right? So you want to do more, but you want to do more with less, right? So it is also to deliver consistent infrastructure, right? So as you go multi-cloud, as you go hyperscale and hybrid cloud, you have to have a consistent experience across all of your infrastructure. It is not like, okay, you switch on a button to go to on-prem and then you switch off that button and you switch on a different set of skills to work with your hyperscaler or public cloud infrastructure. That is not that is not acceptable anymore, to be honest. So there's a lot of people who are looking to standardize their operations across everywhere their infrastructure is. So you can achieve both of this with actually a hybrid operating model. So how do you modernize and transform your existing infrastructure, right? So first of all, as part of modernization, you need to refresh aging infrastructure to HCI. So if you don't know what HCI is, it's basically hyper-converged infrastructure. And what by aging infrastructure, what we mean is traditionally you've had three tiers of infrastructure in your data center, right? So you've had compute, so you've got servers, then you've got storage, and then you've got networking. So all of these components were distinct. They were managed distinctly with little to no interconnection between them. Right. So then came the age of converged infrastructure, where a bunch of vendors kind of combined and said, okay, you know what, we'll come up with a solution that is validated by us. So there's a little less guesswork going on from the customer's end. And then came the HCI, that is basically one vendor said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to combine all these components together, and then we're going to deliver it as an appliance. So HCI has compute, it has storage and networking components all in the same device. And migrate existing Hyper-V deployments, right? So again, Hyper-V, you may have some VMware deployments as well, but all of this is in context with Microsoft. So we are talking in terms of Azure and Hyper-V. So you want to migrate all your aging workloads to the new modern infrastructure. And while you're doing that, you have to, or you want to keep using the familiar management tools, right? So as a Windows admin, you're already familiar with APIs, you're familiar with PowerShell, you're familiar with, let's say, Windows Admin Center, you're familiar with, snap-ins, registry, all those things, right? Certificates. So you want to manage all of that with the familiar management tools. You don't just to be able to adopt this modern technology, you don't have to go and learn something new, something fancy, right? Not at all. You want to keep using the familiar management tools. Again, so this will in turn expand and accelerate consolidation, not only of the hardware consolidation, like I said, compute, networking, and storage, but also software consolidation. And this is also going to term, so all of these are very tested, validated, integrated systems. So that will improve reliability and performance. So most of the systems are, let's say, like 6 nines of availability SLAs. They are very, very robust, very, very reliable. So you don't have to worry about any device failing at all. And even if they do, which is, again, let's face it, it is inevitable that something will go wrong. the vendor that you purchased the HCI solution from will have complete support and all the services that you don't have to even look at what is going on and where, right? So the vendor will do everything by themselves. So again, transformation. So you are, if you are already invested into Azure, Azure is providing all of these fantastic public services. So why not bring them to your on-prem, right? So you've already accustomed basically, right, to using this new monitoring Azure Monitor, let's say, or you're using Security Center quite heavily in your Azure footprint, then why not also standardize that across your on-prem infrastructure as well? So that is where you can actually leverage that hybrid. And Azure is actually hybrid by design. So it is born in the enterprise, it is born hybrid. So it has the seamless ability to connect. So it is not bits and pieces that you connect somewhere, somehow. It is actually a flow that goes seamlessly from Azure public cloud to hybrid cloud. With containers, you can use and build cloud native applications, and you can have them consistently managed on your on-prem as well. Again, so with Kubernetes, with the rise of Kubernetes, AKS is actually the fastest growing service in Azure. So people want to make sure that they are using AKS anywhere and everywhere they can, basically, right? So they are using it on public Azure. They also want to use it on their hybrid cloud. And of course, there are flexible consumptions options. Cloud is flexible in terms of services, of course, but it is also flexible in terms of the cost, right? So you only pay for what you're using. You don't have any capital expenditure, any capex that goes into buying Azure, right? So you don't go and buy Azure. You just go and kind of subscribe to Azure. So you only use your services for however amount of time that you're using in whatever capacity, and you're only billed for that. So it is more of a of course, there is some capex that goes into this as well, but there is most of the utilization is operational expense. Right. So in alignment of all of this, the strategy has also changed. So if you went to any Azure or Microsoft conference 5 years ago, 6 years ago, then there's only the cloud, the talk of moving to cloud, right? So public cloud this, public cloud that, public cloud is so great. Don't run anything on-prem, move everything to Azure. That was the strategy 5, 6 years ago. But today, what has happened that we have quickly realized, even Microsoft has realized, is actually that is not always possible, right? You can't move everything to Azure. Not everyone can go to Azure, right? So they have to have some of their workloads sitting on-prem. Even in the clear age of cloud that we say, again, don't get me wrong, don't get anyone wrong, don't get Microsoft wrong. We are still advocating going to cloud if you can. If you have a workload that is absolutely suitable to move completely to cloud, there's nothing stopping it. There's nobody stopping it, right? But if you have a workload that has to stay on-prem, don't try to like shove it in the cloud just for the sake of modernization. Keep it on-prem, bring some of the Azure services to the on-prem data center for the workload to utilize. So Azure today, the messaging in Azure today is actually innovate anywhere across hybrid and on-prem. You can't come to cloud, that is fine. The cloud will come to you. That is how the strategy has evolved, basically. So why should we care about hybrid at all? Like I just said, can all workloads live in the hyperscale cloud? The answer is no. It could be because of a variety of reasons. It could just be because of compliance, that you want to or you need to have your workload sitting close to your source data. Or it could be that the most common use case we see is governments, right? So governments can't actually move to cloud because they have regulatory compliance issues. They can't send the user data outside of the country. In case of India, I know that the user data, for Indian residents cannot leave the country. So it cannot go to cloud. That is where it has to sit on-prem. Or data gravity is basically that you have latency issues, data gravity and networking, right? So it has to stay close because the workloads are time critical, latency critical, and you don't want any latency of going to cloud and coming back from cloud at all. So you want to have it as close to your on-premise as possible. And then there's cost issue. Um, all good things come with a price, right? So Azure is amazing, of course, but it also has a potential to like spiral you in an endless loop of cost. Um, Cloud cost can go out of hand very quickly. So you have to, at all times, you have to make sure that you're governing and you're maintaining your cost and how much you're spending, where and why. Um, and of course, it could just be the matter of preference, right? So some company would say, okay, I don't know, but I just want to stay on-prem. Our users prefer staying on-prem. So our end users are mostly at the edge locations. So they want to be serviced at their locations locally, so they can't come to cloud. So the cloud is not a location, not anymore, at least, right? So cloud is a concept now, right? So we've basically been spoiled over the last few years that we want to consume. So we fell in love with Azure's management strategy or management interface. Is like, okay, you know what? It's so easy to just go add new disk. It is so easy to add a virtual network. It is so easy to add monitoring. Just go there, click, 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 and your monitoring will be enabled. Or it is so easy to send the logs to a log analytic workspace. And then you just run some queries and you get dashboards. You get the results of your data. You get anomalies. You get alerts, everything, right? Automation, you get it out of the box in the hyperscaler. So we've kind of been accustomed, or we are expecting all of your interface or all of your management to be consistent with that. So if we can't go to cloud, but we don't want to give up the goodness of cloud, right? We don't want to, just because we can't go to cloud does not mean that I should not be able to use the cloud operating model. So the cloud is not actually is not a solution. Sorry, it's not a location. It is the operating model. It is the concept of consuming or providing your infrastructure now. So, okay, let's talk about Azure Stack portfolio in particular now, right? So I know you might be thinking that, okay, I'm beating around the bush at all. This is called an Azure Stack HCI session, and I haven't talked about Azure Stack HCI yet. But to understand why Azure Stack HCI is important, you have to know the background. You have to know why we are moving to Azure Stack HCI. Why should we care? So Hyper-V, actually, this could be a little older numbers actually, but Hyper-V at the time of this research makes up 30% of hypervisor market today, right? So of course, VMware is the dominating one, but Hyper-V is right behind. So it makes up 30% of Hyper-V hypervisor market. And Microsoft, with its new solutions, is positioned to be a formidable player in the hybrid cloud. So there's actually a few players in hybrid cloud in space. So there's of course VMware, there's Google, AWS, Azure, but Azure Strategy by far is in my opinion, could be, I don't know, could be biased, but it is the best approach that Microsoft is taking towards providing the hybrid solution. 90% of customers have cloud strategies, like I said. They are either already on cloud or they are thinking of moving to cloud. And 93% of enterprises have a multi-cloud strategy, right? So multi-cloud does not always mean some AWS, some GCP, some Azure. It also means some on-prem and some on hyperscalers. Of course, Microsoft has, Azure has a strong foothold in both enterprises and SMBs, right? So organizations, no matter small or big, are using Azure in some capacity. And it is basically a leader in hybrid cloud in the influence revenue. And with the launch of Azure Stack HCI operating system, Microsoft is basically to rocket ahead and become number 3 player in HCI market with about 10 to 15% share in next 3 years, which is not a long time, right? So number 3 is, I think first one is VMware, if I'm not wrong. Microsoft, yeah. So number 3 player in HCI. So we have got VMware in the space. We have got Nutanix, GCP, AWS. HP, Lenovo, Dell, everyone is actually moving to a hybrid cloud approach nowadays. So there are a couple of solutions actually as part of the Microsoft Azure Stack HCI portfolio, not HCI portfolio, Microsoft Hybrid Cloud portfolio. And all of this is ran by Azure Arc. So Azure Arc is at the heart of all of these solutions, right? So what Azure Arc does is it extends Azure management capabilities on-prem. Not only on-prem, actually, just extends management capabilities out of Azure. Right, so you can install an Azure Arc on resources that are not in Azure. They could be running on-prem. They could be running on, let's say, AWS. They could be running on GCP Cloud. But as soon as you install that Arc agent, they will be able to talk to Azure and will be able to utilize whatever governance that Azure provides in terms of its um, management. So there are three products, Azure Stack Hub, Azure Stack HCI, and Azure Stack Edge. Azure Stack HCI is by far the most popular and the most, let's say, invested product by Microsoft today. So Azure Stack HCI is actually the favorite child of Microsoft in this category. Azure Stack Hub is basically what Hub is I like to call it is it's a piece of Azure cake, right? So when you install Azure Stack Hub or when you order Azure Stack Hub, it basically gives you Azure in a box, right? So you have a lot of public services that you would be able to utilize, so you will be able to execute on that rack of appliance, right? So it is actually pretty expensive. It is used in disconnected scenarios mostly because where Azure cannot go, it's like I said, if there's a huge mining plant somewhere, let's say, you want to want to have a critical dependency on latency, but you want to use all the AI, ML, IoT capabilities that Azure public services provide. But of course, there is no internet. There's somewhere remote in the forest of Africa. Maybe there's no internet at all. But why should that stop you from using Azure services? It should not. So that is where you go for Azure Stack Hub. You order the appliance and you connect. All your users will connect to that appliance that sits on your premise, and they would feel as if they were connected to Azure. So that comes with its pros and cons. We will not talk a lot about Azure Stack. That's a discussion for a different day. And this is Azure Stack Edge. Again, this is a first-hand appliance provided by Microsoft that gives you all the AI, ML, critical latency workload issues, workload features that your workloads might need at the edge. This is actually provided by Microsoft. Unlike the rest of the two, Azure Stack Hub and Azure Stack HCI, they are actually provided through a vendor. So the hardware comes from the vendor, for example, Dell in my case. And Azure Stack HCI, Azure Stack Edge is actually, it ships from Microsoft themselves, right? So it is managed from Azure portal. So there is no role to play for external vendors there. So what is Azure Stack HCI then? It is a hyper-converged solution. Like I said, it converges all of your infrastructure into a single appliance. It is scalable, so it is software defined. So all of your compute, storage, and networking is software defined. So you don't have to work with the actual hardware at all. So once you go plug it in, give it power, connect it to your main network, and you're done. So all the rest of the things will be taken care by an interface with use of a software, right? So it has software-defined networking. It has software-defined storage as well, right? It uses S2D storage spaces direct, an SDS software-defined solution by Microsoft, and SDN, and then compute, right? So all of this you manage with Windows Admin Center, which is a portal that you can install on-prem that works on HTML browser. And it is best suited for remote branch offices. So it is like this big only. This is not much. It's a small appliance. So you can start from a single node. And you can go up to 8 nodes, 16 nodes. You can go further as well. But the best use case is used for edge locations, but that does not mean that you cannot use it in scale. You can also use it in scale for your core data centers. So I just want to quickly talk about what Azure Arc is, right? So like I said, Azure Arc sits at the bottom of all of this. Azure Arc is what is powering this. So Azure Arc will, basically it is the glue between your non-Azure and Azure resources. So even if you have a virtual machine sitting in your premise, so even if I have, let's say, a server that I'm running on my desk right here, I can also project that server onto Azure to make use of all the Azure capabilities. All I have to do is I have to install an Azure Arc agent. What it will do effectively, it will project the image, let's say, of this server to Azure. And on that image, I can apply all the native Azure services. So I can use Azure Monitor, I can use Azure Automation, I can use Security Center, I can use what is the automation, update, net patching. So all of these things I can still use on my server that is sitting on my desk, right? So it's an amazing software that comes. It's been a heart of Azure, Azure's hybrid strategy for the time that it has come out. All right, so finally we arrive at what is Azure Stack HCI. After 50% of the presentation is done. And so what is Azure Stack HCI? It is basically a purpose-built HCI operating system, right? When I tell that to people, a lot of them are surprised. So they say, oh, it's just an operating system. Well, yeah, it is, but it is purpose-built for HCI. What that means is, this is basically illustrated in this slide. So it is basically a rundown version of Windows operating system. So it is not new. Again, one of the things that I hear a lot from people is that, is it too expensive or is it something new that we have to learn? Not at all. It is just basically, if you're familiar with Windows operating system, this is Windows operating system, but for purpose built, right? What that means is Microsoft basically skimmed off all the unnecessary features that don't need to be present in a virtualized platform. And they have given it, rebranded it as Azure Stack HCI with some additional capabilities, of course. So again, like I said, it uses Hyper-V for virtualization. It uses S2D, Storage Spaces Direct, for storage, and it uses SDN for networking. It also has some additional capabilities that Windows Server does not natively has, like stretch clustering for disaster recovery. What that basically means is you can replicate this cluster to a different location, right? So I can have have my primary cluster sitting in, let's say, in India, and my secondary is sitting in the US. So I can actually replicate all the data from my India cluster to my US cluster. All just this is native feature of Azure Stack HCI, so you don't have to purchase anything extra. Azure is hybrid by design, as we've discussed extensively so far, so I won't really go into much details there. And of course, familiar management and tools. So we've got Windows Admin Center, System Center, PowerShell, right? So everything that you're running on-prem right now on Windows operating system can run on Azure Stack HCI. Simple as that, right? So we do get asked a lot about what are the workloads, what is the use case for Azure Stack HCI? The answer is simple. Whatever that you are running on your virtual machines on Windows Server, you can run on Azure Stack HCI. And then Dell provides integrated system for Microsoft Azure Stack HCI, which is not the scope of this meeting, so I'll just leave that for now. So this is what an Azure Stack HCI cluster looks like when you project it into Azure. So what you do is when you spin up an Azure Stack HCI cluster, you have to kind of register it to an Azure subscription. So once you do that, you see here, it has actually appeared as if it was a native Azure resource, which it is not, right? So remember, this is sitting on your premise, on your servers that you can go physically touch, right? So this is not sitting in Azure. This is sitting on on your premise, but a projection of it is projected into public Azure. And if you click through it, you will, so you see here on the left, you see that these are all the basic constructs on the Azure resources that you can natively use on any resource that is natively present in Azure. Right, so you can apply IAM policies, you can apply tags, you can add virtual machines. So there's actually a new feature. I think it is generally available now. So like you can actually provision new virtual machines from Azure portal in your Azure Stack HCI, which is amazing because you don't even have to log into your on-prem Azure Stack HCI cluster. You can just manage everything from the Azure portal. Again, I won't go much into details, but this is what I was trying to highlight is that the Azure Arc, as soon as you register these clusters, the Azure Arc agent will automatically get installed, and you have all the capabilities that you would be able to do on a public Azure resource. So what is the solution architecture? Drago, are you there? Can you keep me, can you give me a time check?
You have, I think, 2 or 3 more minutes, Sam.
Okay, cool. Right, so I'll just go through the Azure Stack HCI solution architecture, right? So here at the bottom, what this looks like is you have a hardware ecosystem. So in this case, again, a Dell EMC integrated system, but there are some other vendors as well that you can go and explore. So what this does is basically these are these integrated nodes, especially made for HCI, especially for Azure Stack HCI, right? And then on top of it, you have the Azure Stack HCI operating system. Again, in case of an integrated solution, Azure Stack HCI operating system will come pre-installed. So when you receive that appliance, when you receive the servers, Azure Stack HCI operating system will already be installed on it. And basically just think of this as a virtualization layer. Just think of this as Hyper-V, right? So as on any virtualization layer, you can spin up virtual machines. So normally you go ahead, you have Hyper-V there. So you go and install your virtual machines and then install your, so this is called, let's call this a primary operating system that sits on bare metal. And then you've got virtual machines and you can run on the virtual machines whatever operating system you want. So you can run Windows, you can run Linux, you can run anything. So let's call this the secondary operating systems, right? So once you have the operating system on the primary level, which is just basically acts as a virtualization level, then you have the freedom to choose whether you want to run virtual machines or you can directly run even AKS as the service on top of Azure Stack HCI. Again, so this is a very powerful feature in terms of that you can consolidate or you can standardize all of your compliance or all of your operations across on-prem as well as Azure, as well as public Azure. And then, of course, on top of this, you run whatever end user application that you have, supports all the usual applications. So all of this, except the hardware level, all of this is actually managed by Azure Arc, like I said. So this projects as a resource, as a native resource in Azure. So you can use all the public services that you can natively use on any Azure resource. So again, what are the technical use cases? Like I said, anything and everything that runs on-prem today can run on Azure Stack HCI. There are some things that some features of Azure Stack HCI that I haven't really touched on because of the restriction in time, but let's just give you a quick refresh. If you actually move to Azure Stack HCI operating system, you get, so 2000 server 2008 2012 is actually going end of life soon, is actually has gone end of life. 2008 12 is going soon. So if you move to Azure Stack HCI, you get 3 years worth of extended free security support from Microsoft. And so what it happens basically, if you go out of life, then you have to purchase the extended support from Microsoft, which is expensive, trust me. And with that expense, without instead of spending that into just renewing your extended support, you can actually just go to modernize your, invest that into your modernization of hardware. Again, all of this BDI is also one of the very popular services or demands today. So is AKS. And remote office, branch office, like I said, because Azure Stack HCI has a very small footprint, it can basically just go sit on a very tiny shelf, and it still gives you the highest performance that an HCI system can give you. Again, these are just some of the services that you can connect to. This is not a comprehensive list. This list is getting bigger and bigger every day. So just some of the most common ones: Azure Backup, there's Azure File Sync Monitor, ASR even, right? So if you have any workloads that need to be replicated to cloud in case of a disaster, then you have that support in Azure Stack HCI as well, right? So all of this native cloud services are not native anymore. You can actually go and bring them down to your private cloud as well. I think that brings me to the end of my presentation today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Again, it can be about Azure Stack HCI. It can be a Dell solution if you are interested in whatever it is. I am happy to answer.
I don't have any questions. Just wanted to thank you, Sam. A really cool and very, very interesting session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.